In April 2017, industry veterans Playtonic Games released Yooka-Laylee, a spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie, one of the best 3D platformers ever made, and personally one of my favorite games of all time. This year they revealed the next game in the series. This game, however, strays away from the 3D platforming genre and goes even further back in time as they tackle the 2D platformer genre with heavy inspiration from the Donkey Kong Country series. Hey guys, Game Prime here, and this is my review of Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. After the completion of Yooka-Laylee in 2017, the team over at Playtonic Games didn't want to go straight into a direct sequel. They instead decided to take an interesting turn and go back in time from 1998 to 1994 with a 2D platformer in the style of the Donkey Kong Country games. Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair takes place sometime after the first game, and starts off as we see our new iconic buddy duo plan to thwart a returning Capital B in his new Impossible Lair. Queen Phoebe from the Royal Stingdom appears and lets Yooka and Laylee use her battalion guards as protective shields, but gets stopped dead in their tracks when Capital B uses his hive mind and encapsulates every member of the battalion. After beating Yooka and Laylee with no battalion to back them up, they are forced to retreat. As Queen Phoebe pulls out each of the chapters, which hold 2 battalion members, our buddy duo is off to each of the 20 chapters as their next big adventure is about to unfold. As mentioned before, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair takes its main inspiration from the Donkey Kong Country series of games, as each chapter is a 2D platforming stage. The overworld, however, is 2.5D, similar to that of a Zelda game, like the newly released Link's Awakening remake. In this big open space, Yooka and Laylee travel between the chapters and will have to solve puzzles, interact with new and familiar faces, and do a little platforming along the way. Almost immediately you run into your old buddy Trouser, who has told you all about his new venture into the wonderful world of paywalls. An excellent play on the word, as he specifically tells you that you need to pay him a certain number of twit coins to progress further in each area of the overworld. Twit coins in this game are very similar to the Kong letters in the Donkey Kong Country games, although Playtonic goes a little bit further with this concept as they are used for currency. Speaking of currency, your other source of currency in this game are quills, which are returning from the first game. These quills, however, are essentially your bananas, since there seems to be a whole lot of them throughout the entire game. In each chapter, you will run into creatures called quill ghosts, which are similar to the ghost riders from the first Yooka-Laylee. Doing these challenges will grant you a special quill similar to the treble clefs from Banjo-Tooie, and they are worth 10 quills each. Although these challenges are fun, they caused my death way more than I could count. Just like in the original, there are a few types of these ghosts and will require you to do something different in order to receive the quill. Also, just wanted to put this here. Early on you will run into this little red and orange bird from the first Yooka-Laylee who always hung around Blasto, the true hero of Yooka-Laylee. Turns out her name is actually Kabumi, as I always called her, not knowing that was her official name. And it's amazing that the pair is Blasto and Kabumi. Pages, the main collectible from the first game, return as they offer their special ability to modify the overworld, just like how they could expand the Grand Tomes in the first game. However, in order to modify the overworld, they must complete a Pagey challenge. These are essentially the bonus rooms from the Donkey Kong Country games. So instead of having them one within a chapter, they made it a little 1-minute minigame that you could access from the overworld. After you complete each, pages will fill the screen with the most 80s sounding theme I have ever heard in a game. Each chapter has 2 versions to it, a concept that was toyed around with in the original Yooka-Laylee. Instead of making the levels bigger, it now changes the states of the stage. Some could be frozen, some could be windy, some could be flooded. It's different for nearly every stage and doesn't make the game stale one bit, even if you think it would. Within these 2D levels, you can use tonics, found within the 3D overworld and bought within the tonic menu. These are essentially game modifiers. They could be something that a cheat code would do, a level enhancer, a level de-hancer, or change the look of the stage like this Game Boy style tonic. Tonics are also another genius way that Playtonic puts their sixth sense of humor in this game. Just like in the old school Rareware Donkey Kong Country games, you have 2 hit points in the stage. The first time you take a hit, Laylee will start flying around, and if you don't catch her, she will fly away. This is basically Baby Mario from Yoshi's Island, but you could still carry on without Laylee. Doing so makes the game so much harder, since Laylee is literally carrying half of, if not more, of your entire moveset. Laylee can be called back to you with Laylee Bells, which are this game's DK barrels. Also, if a chapter is being too challenging for you, the checkpoint robot will tell you that it feels your pain and agony, and can skip you forward to the next checkpoint if need be. I never once used this feature though, as I wanted to experience every level all the way through and find all 5 Twit coins in each chapter. At the end of each of the 20 chapters, there is a battalion guard member that will help you in the Impossible Lair. Each of these members all have their own name and little backstory to them that you could read within the pause menu. Some were named after fans that won a contest on social media, some are developers, composers, and even one named after another company of former Rareware members. From the get-go, you can choose to attempt the Impossible Lair, similar to Breath of the Wild, where you could head straight to the castle once you get off the Great Plateau. If you attempt this and beat the Impossible Lair, it will prove yourself to be a god at 2D platformers, because the Impossible Lair is practically impossible. Impossible until you collect every 48 battalion guard members, that is. Each battalion guard member acts as 1 hit point within the lair itself, and trust me, you are going to need all 48 of them. There are no checkpoints in the lair, it is roughly a 30-minute level, and it's hard as hell. You really have to prove yourself worthy to complete this game in its entirety. It took me about 10 tries to finally complete the lair, and when I did, it's the best feeling of accomplishment you could ask for in a video game. There were 2 chapters in specific that I really liked more than others, even though they were all fun and challenging. One of which was Cliffside Quest from the 3rd area of the game. This level introduced a Metroidvania type aspect to the level, as you needed to collect 5 crystals in order to unlock the Battalion Hive. The other chapter was Turbine Trouble, in its title form, from the 4th area of the game. This alternate version of the chapter introduced a gimmick similar to that of Lockjaw's Locker from Donkey Kong Country 2, and I thought it was a cool callback to that iconic level. When the original Yooka-Laylee came out, I remember hearing a handful of people say it had bugs, and that there were problems with it. I never saw one. I played the game practically flawlessly and didn't encounter one bug, and when I thought I did, it was from my own stupidity because I forgot to do a challenge for a pagey. In Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, however, I managed to run into 2 bugs in the 3D overworld and ended up soft-locking my game each of those times and required me to restart the game. These glitches weren't anything bad, but they were bugs, and I hope Playtonic Games can fix this in a later update. The only other 2 negative things I could really think of for this game is that 1, it lacked boss battles. The first Yooka-Laylee had 1 boss battle per Grand Tome that gave you a pagey, and in the Donkey Kong Country games, there was always a boss at the end of each section. Aside from the capital B fights within the Impossible Lair, this game felt kinda odd without bosses, I'm not gonna lie. But I guess that's what we get in a game that forces you to pay to progress, am I right? Joking aside, I was shocked that there were no boss battles, and is one of the only 2 things that I did not enjoy about the game. The second was that Cardos, the lovable minecart from the first game, barely played a role in the Donkey Kong Country spiritual successor. Let's think that through one more time. The minecart sections were absent from a game that is very similar to Donkey Kong Country. We have ropes, we have blasting flowers that are essentially barrels, a Game Boy filter tonic, a 4:3 aspect ratio tonic, which is amazing by the way, but no minecart levels. I will admit that they weren't the best part of the original Yooka-Laylee, but pure 2D minecart levels would have fit in so well with this game. I am, however, very glad, and I mean very glad, that we did not have to see or deal with Rectro. It's been 2.5 years, and I'm still trying to recover from Hurdle Hijinks, and his annoying damn theme that would haunt me every time I died. Other than those few flaws, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair's gameplay is amazing and mashes up so many genres that it creates something special and memorable for the game and really makes its own identity. This one will be pretty quick. The graphics are the same cartoony, googly-eyed style of the first game, something you would expect out of the Playtonic team that just screams 1990s. I played the game on the Nintendo Switch, docked most of the time, but even in handheld mode, the game looks amazing. It kept a solid 60 frames per second through and through, and I don't recall it dipping even once. The only time the game buffered for me was when I booted it back up from sleep mode. The one thing I can easily complain and compliment at the same time, however, are the load screens. When you boot the game up for the first time, it will take at least a minute or so to load the game, but once you're in the game, you're in. The load times between the overworld and chapters are pretty quick, and when you die within the level, you're almost immediately loaded back to the checkpoint, keeping you immersed in the chapter and removing any time waiting to play again. That alone nearly makes the super long load screen worth it. The music also doesn't restart when you die, which is a nice touch, so if you're vibing out to one of the wonderful tracks within the game, your vibe doesn't die when you do. Speaking of music, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair once again proves that Playtonic Games are masters at getting the best people to compose their games. This time around they brought 2 new composers in, Matt Griffin and Dan Murdoch. These 2 composed at least 80% of the game's soundtrack and really shocked me. The other 20% are composed by the legendary dynamic duo of buddy duo soundtracks, David Wise and Grant Kirkhope. David Wise, the genius behind the Donkey Kong Country series soundtracks, returned to compose the main theme, a small handful of chapters like the first chapter, and every track in the Impossible Lair. Grant Kirkhope returns once again as well, and you could hear his Kirkography grow as he composes each version of the overworld theme. As mentioned earlier, Matt Griffin and Dan Murdoch are the new boys in town, and they did an amazing job with this game's soundtrack, with obvious inspiration from David Wise and even Evelyn Fisher, who composed the original Donkey Kong Country 3. Each chapter had a unique feel, and the music fit each perfectly. Some of my favorite songs from this game are There are also underwater versions of each chapter, but unfortunately Playtonic did not include them on the official release of the soundtrack, which you could all buy now on Bandcamp. This soundtrack is so great and definitely worth the purchase. It is perfect for this game, but I still think I prefer the original Yooka-Laylee soundtrack over this one, just because that is the perfect soundtrack for what that game was, meant to be. Overall, I had an amazing time with Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. I thought the original Yooka-Laylee was a perfect spiritual successor to one of my favorite series in Banjo-Kazooie. And I think Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair is a great spiritual successor to the Donkey Kong Country series and definitely filled the gap that has been empty since Tropical Freeze's Switch re-release. Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair gave me 16 plus hours of enjoyment, laughs, shocks, everything I could have asked for in this type of game. I do, however, hope to see a true sequel to Yooka-Laylee now that we went and seen what else the amazing team over at Playtonic can do with the same characters, but different genre. 2D platforming was fun for a while, but now the 3D platformer gap is starting to feel empty again, and I hope a Yooka-Laylee is on its way and can fill that gap very soon. With all that being said, guys, I had a great time with this game, and I hope to see more 2D platforming hybrid adventures with Yooka and Laylee in the future, though I definitely wanted Yooka-Laylee first. And maybe a Yooka-Laylee kart racing game like Diddy Kong Racing. Anyway, I'm giving Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair a 9 out of 10 for amazing 2D platforming, fun 2.5D overworld sections, an amazing soundtrack, hilarious writing I could only ask for from the Playtonic team, fan service to those who played the first Yooka-Laylee, and a stellar adventure starring our new favorite buddy duo. Although the lack of boss battles and minecart sections made this Donkey Kong spiritual successor feel just a bit off. This game is great though, and if you are a fan of Donkey Kong Country, Banjo-Kazooie, or the first Yooka-Laylee, this game is a must-buy and a must-play. Once again, I just want to say a huge thank you to the team over at Playtonic Games for creating these brand new worlds, characters, and songs that will forever be with me just like the old school Rareware games. And if you haven't already, go pick this game up if you've been eyeing it for a little bit. It's amazing, and I guarantee you will have a good time with it if you enjoy 2D platformers. It definitely gives Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze a run for its money. Anyway guys, thank you all so much for watching my review of Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. I put a lot of time into this game, into this review. I definitely, wanted to review this game because I love this series. I love these guys who make these games for us. And it's crazy that in 2019, we're getting this type of game. But yeah, definitely give it a thumbs up if you guys like the review. And leave your thoughts on it below. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you guys very soon.